The crystal chandelier weighed more than I did. I watched the installation crew hoist it toward the vaulted ceiling of the Salvatore Estate's grand ballroom, my clipboard pressed against my chest, as I mentally calculated whether the reinforced mounting would hold. 5,000 pounds of Murano glass and gold leaf, imported from Venice specifically for tonight's event. If it fell, it wouldn't just destroy the ballroom. It would destroy my reputation, my business, everything I'd built over the past 6 years. Ms. Moretti, the florist is asking about the centerpieces. Marco, my assistant, appeared at my elbow, his tablet already extended toward me with photos of rose arrangements that looked nothing like what I'd approved. I exhaled slowly through my nose, the way I'd taught myself to do when stress threatened to crack my professional composure. Those are peonies, not roses. Tell them if they can't follow the specifications. They can leave and I'll have another florist here within the hour. My voice came out harder than intended, but Marco didn't flinch. He'd worked for me long enough to know that Fiore Moretti didn't accept anything less than perfection. Especially not tonight. Especially not for this client. The Salvatore estate sprawled across 20 acres of the city's most exclusive district, a fortress of old money and older secrets disguised as architectural beauty. I'd coordinated events in mansions, museums, and 5-star hotels across 3 states, but nothing compared to this. The stone walls seemed to absorb sound, creating pockets of eerie silence even as dozens of workers moved through the space. Security cameras watched from every corner, and men in dark suits with obvious bulges under their jackets stood at strategic intervals, their eyes tracking every movement. This wasn't just a party. It was a coronation. Louis Salvatore was officially taking over as head of the family tonight. The invitations had been carefully worded to suggest a business celebration, but everyone who mattered knew the truth. The old guard was dead, and the prince was becoming king. I'd known who the client was when I accepted the job. Of course I had. The Salvatore name wasn't exactly obscure in this city, but I'd convinced myself it would be fine. It had been 7 years. I was a different person now. Professional, successful, in control of my life in ways my 18-year-old self couldn't have imagined. I hadn't expected to see him. The event coordinator only dealt with the family's chief of staff, a severe woman named Claudia, who'd hired me based on my portfolio and reputation. 3 months of planning, countless meetings, and not once had Louis Salvatore himself appeared. Until today. Ms. Moretti? A different voice, deeper, tinged with an Italian accent that I'd worked hard to suppress in my own speech. I need to speak with you about the security arrangements for the east entrance. I turned, prepared to direct another staff member, and the world tilted on its axis. He stood 10 feet away, hands in the pockets of tailored charcoal slacks, white dress shirt open at the collar revealing the hollow of his throat where I'd once pressed my lips. 7 years had sharpened the boyish features I remembered into something more dangerous. His jaw was stronger, shadowed with deliberate stubble. His dark hair, longer than most men in his position wore it, fell across his forehead in a way that still made my fingers itch to brush it back. But his eyes were the same, that particular shade of brown that seemed to shift to amber in certain light, framed by thick lashes that had once made me laugh and call him unfair. Those eyes widened fractionally as recognition hit him with the same force it hit me. Fiore? My name in his mouth was a question, disbelief, and something that sounded dangerously like hope all at once. I gripped my clipboard tighter, using the pressure of the metal edge against my palm to ground myself in the present. Mr. Salvatore, I wasn't aware you'd be personally overseeing the setup details. If you have concerns about the east entrance, I can have my security liaison coordinate with your team. Professional? Distant? As if he were any other client and I any other event coordinator. His brow furrowed, confusion rippling across features that had haunted my dreams for years. Fiore, it's me, Louis. He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. I can't believe. What are you doing here? When did you come back to the city? I tried to find you after... I need to check on the catering setup. I cut him off, my voice ice where his was fire. If you'll excuse me, Mr. Salvatore. I turned on my heel, but his hand caught my wrist, gentle but insistent. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm, muscle memory from a night 7 years ago when those same hands had mapped every inch of my body with reverence that had made me believe in fairy tales. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. I pulled my wrist free and finally met his eyes directly, letting him see the wall I'd built between who I'd been and who I'd become. We have a professional relationship, Mr. Salvatore. Let's keep it that way. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, maybe, or confusion. Professional relationship? Fiore? We had one night 7 years ago. I kept my voice low, aware of the workers moving around us, the security guards whose attention had sharpened at Lewis's obvious interest. A night that's long over. I'm here to coordinate your event, nothing more. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. This time when I walked away, he didn't follow. But I felt his gaze burning into my back, felt the weight of questions he didn't know how to ask, and answers I'd never give him. My hands trembled as I made my way through the servants' corridor toward the kitchen. I'd prepared for this possibility, rehearsed my reactions, built contingency plans for every scenario, but I hadn't prepared for the way my body would remember him, for the way 7 years of distance would evaporate the moment those amber brown eyes found mine. I locked myself in a bathroom, marble and gold fixtures that probably cost more than my first car, and braced my hands against the sink. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the girl Louis had known. My dark hair was styled in a sleek professional updo instead of the wild curls I'd worn at 18, subtle makeup instead of none, a tailored black dress and heels instead of vintage jeans and combat boots. Even my name was different now. Moretti instead of DeLuca, taken from my grandmother's side to put distance between my old life and my new one. But my eyes were the same, and in them, I could still see the girl who'd believed in love at first sight, who'd given herself completely to a stranger in the span of one perfect night, who'd paid for that perfection with 7 years of secrets and sacrifice. A sharp knock on the door made me straighten. Ms. Moretti, the ice sculptor just arrived and he's saying the display case isn't the right temperature. Marco's voice carried an edge of panic. He's threatening to leave. I closed my eyes, took one more slow breath, and let the mask of professional competence slide back into place. Tell him I'll be right there. The next 4 hours were a controlled chaos of last-minute adjustments and minor crises that I handled with the efficiency that had made my reputation. The chandelier was secured. The florist replaced the wrong flowers. The ice sculpture, a replica of the Salvatore family crest, was positioned in climate-controlled perfection. Staff was briefed, security was coordinated, and every detail I'd planned for 3 months fell into place like dominoes. I didn't see Louis again, but I felt him. Felt his presence in the building like a change in air pressure. Felt his eyes finding me across rooms when I moved through the estate. Once, I turned a corner and nearly ran into him. But he was deep in conversation with 2 older men, whose expensive suits and hard faces marked them as family business. His eyes tracked me as I passed, but he didn't break away from his conversation. Good. That was good. Professional distance was exactly what we needed. By 6 o'clock, guests began arriving. I stationed myself near the entrance, monitoring the flow, ensuring greeters were positioned correctly and coat check was running smoothly. The city's elite filed through, politicians, business magnates, and the carefully vetted members of affiliated families who controlled everything from dock unions to judges' chambers. And then there was Louis. He descended the main staircase at precisely 7, flanked by 2 men I recognized from photos as his closest advisors. He'd changed into a tuxedo that looked hand-stitched, every line emphasizing the lean strength of his body. His hair was styled back now, revealing the sharp architecture of his face. He looked every inch the Mafia prince he'd been raised to be. Our eyes met across the crowded entrance hall. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more of an acknowledgement. A promise that this conversation wasn't over. I looked away first, turning my attention to a server whose tray was tilting dangerously. But my pulse hammered in my throat, and I knew with sinking certainty that surviving tonight was going to require every ounce of control I'd spent 7 years building. Because Luis Salvatore didn't know he had a son, and I intended to keep it that way. The party was flawless. I'd made certain of that. 300 guests mingled beneath my Murano chandelier, champagne flowed from fountains I'd personally selected, and a string quartet played Vivaldi in perfect harmony from the elevated stage. Every detail executed with precision, every moment orchestrated to showcase the Salvatore family's power and sophistication. And Luis couldn't take his eyes off me. I felt his attention like a physical touch, tracking me as I moved through the ballroom, checking on staff, adjusting a centerpiece here, redirecting a server there. Professional, focused, completely in control. Except I wasn't. Not really. Because every time I caught sight of him, laughing with a senator, shaking hands with a casino owner, accepting congratulations from men who controlled half the city's underground, I saw flashes of the boy I'd known for one perfect night. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he'd whispered against my collarbone, his hands trembling slightly as they traced the curve of my waist. "I feel like I've been waiting for you without knowing it." I'd laughed, giddy with champagne and desire and the reckless freedom of being 18. "That's just the alcohol talking." "No." He'd pulled back to look at me, those amber brown eyes serious in a way that had made my heart stutter. "This is real, Fiore. I don't know how, but this is real." Real. God, how naive we'd both been. "Ms. Moretti, we have a situation with the main course timing." Marco appeared at my elbow, his voice tight with stress. "The kitchen says there's a delay with the beef Wellington." I pushed the memory down deep where it belonged. How long a delay? 15 minutes, maybe 20. My mind raced through solutions. Have them extend the champagne service and bring out the amuse-bouche early. Small plates, make it seem intentional. Tell the servers it's a deliberate pace to encourage mingling. Marco nodded and hurried off. I was congratulating myself on the save when I felt the air shift behind me. "You always were good at thinking on your feet." Luis's voice sent a shiver down my spine that I desperately tried to suppress. "I remember that about you." I didn't turn around. "Mr. Salvatore, you should be with your guests. They can wait." He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive that was completely different from the cheap drugstore body spray he'd worn at 18. "We need to talk, Fiore." "No, we don't." I finally looked at him, keeping my expression neutral even as my heart hammered against my ribs. "We had one night 7 years ago. That doesn't entitle you to anything now." His jaw tightened. One night that meant something. At least it did to me. The words hit harder than they should have, because it had meant something to me too, until his father had proven exactly how little that something actually mattered. People say a lot of things they don't mean when they're 18. I turned to face him fully, letting him see the woman I'd become. Hard, guarded, nothing like the open, trusting girl who'd fallen into bed with him after 6 hours of conversation. We were kids playing at being adults. Now we actually are adults. Let's act like it. "Is that what you think?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the guests milling nearby wouldn't overhear. "That it was just kids playing? Because I looked for you, Fiore, for months. You disappeared without a trace, no phone number, no social media, nothing. It was like you'd never existed." My chest tightened. He'd looked for me. While I was hiding in a women's shelter 3 states away, throwing up every morning and trying to figure out how to survive, he'd been looking for me. But he hadn't been looking hard enough. Because if he had, he would have found the truth. Would have discovered what his father had done. I moved on. The lie tasted bitter. You should do the same. I did move on. His voice dropped even lower, intimate in a way that made my skin flush. I've been with other women, built a life, taken over the family business. But I've never forgotten you, Fiore. Never stopped wondering what happened, why you left, whether you ever thought about that night the way I did. Every single day, every time I looked at our son's face and saw Louis's eyes staring back at me. Every time Luca asked about his father and I had to lie, had to protect him from a truth that would destroy everything I'd built. You're romanticizing a one-night stand. I forced steel into my voice. We barely knew each other. I knew you well enough to fall. He stopped himself, but the unspoken word hung between us. I knew you well enough to remember every detail. The way you argued with me about Hemingway versus Fitzgerald. How you danced barefoot on the beach because you said shoes were a prison. The scar on your hip from falling out of a tree when you were 7. The way you tasted like strawberries in summer. Each memory was a knife between my ribs. Because I remembered too. Remembered everything about that night with painful clarity. The good and the nightmare that followed. Ms. Moretti. One of the servers rushed over, panic in her eyes. There's an issue with the wine service. The sommelier says half the bottles are the wrong vintage. I seized the interruption like a lifeline. Excuse me, Mr. Salvatore. Duty calls. This time his hand closed around my wrist before I could walk away. The touch was gentle but firm, sending heat racing through my veins that I absolutely could not afford to feel. Have dinner with me. His voice was low, urgent. After this is over. Let me explain. Explain what? I jerked my hand free, emotion cracking through my professional mask. There's nothing to explain, Louis. We had one night. It ended. I don't owe you anything, and you certainly don't owe me explanations for living your life. Then why do you look at me like I hurt you? The question was quiet, devastated. What did I do, Fiore? Because something happened, something that put that pain in your eyes, and I need to understand what it was. The wine crisis saved me from answering. I turned away, and this time he let me go, but I felt his confusion and hurt following me across the ballroom. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of managed crises and forced smiles. The wine situation was resolved, a mix-up in the cellar easily fixed. The dinner service went off perfectly despite the earlier delay. Speeches were made, toasts were given, and Louis Salvatore was officially welcomed as the new head of the family to thunderous applause. I watched from the shadows, my role completed, my presence unnecessary now that the event was running smoothly. Watched him accept congratulations with the easy charm that came naturally to him. Watched him smile and laugh and command the room with the same magnetic presence that had drawn me to him 7 years ago. He was magnificent, powerful, exactly what his family had groomed him to be. And I hated him for it. Hated that he got to stand there, celebrated and untouched by the consequences of our night together. While I had spent 7 years struggling, sacrificing, building a life from nothing with a child to protect and no one to help me. It wasn't fair. It wasn't his fault. He hadn't known, hadn't been given the choice. But it still wasn't fair. Ready to head out? Marco appeared at my elbow as the party began winding down toward midnight. The overnight crew can handle breakdown and cleanup. I nodded, already reaching for my coat. I'd parked 3 blocks away, a deliberate choice to avoid being trapped by valet parking if I needed a quick exit. My feet ached in heels I'd worn for 16 hours straight, but the thought of my car, of escape, of getting back to my son waiting at home with the sitter, pushed me forward. I made it to the service entrance before Louis found me. Leaving without saying goodbye? He leaned against the doorframe, jacket off and sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms I absolutely did not need to notice. That's cold, Fiore. The event is over, Mr. Salvatore. My contract is fulfilled. I pulled my coat tighter against the October chill. Send any feedback to my office email. Stop calling me that. Frustration bled through his controlled facade. Stop treating me like a stranger when we both know. We are strangers. I cut him off. That's exactly what we are. What we've always been. That's not true, and you know it. He pushed off the doorframe, closing the distance between us. Something happened between us that night, Fiore. Something real. And I don't care how much time has passed or how much you've changed. I can still see it in your eyes when you look at me. You felt it too. My throat tightened dangerously. What I felt doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. He reached for my hand, and this time I let him take it, too tired to pull away. Whatever I did to hurt you, let me make it right. Let me. You can't. The words escaped before I could stop them, raw and honest. You can't make it right, Louis. What's done is done, and all we can do is move forward separately. Why? His thumb traced circles on the inside of my wrist, the same gesture that had once made me melt. Why does it have to be separate? Why can't we? Because I have a son. The words hung in the air between us, accidental and damning. I hadn't meant to tell him, hadn't meant to give him even that much information. But the exhaustion, the emotional toll of being near him, the weight of 7 years of secrets, it had all conspired to loosen my tongue. His face went very still. A son. Yes. I pulled my hand free, wrapping my arms around myself. I have a 6-year-old son, so whatever you're imagining, whatever you think could happen between us, it can't. My life is complicated in ways you don't understand. 6 years old. I watched him do the math, saw the moment the timeline registered. His eyes widened. Fiore, is he? Good night, Mr. Salvatore. I turned and walked into the October darkness, my heels clicking against pavement, my heart hammering in my throat. I'd said too much, given him too much information. And I knew with sinking certainty that Louis Salvatore didn't let mysteries go unsolved. Behind me, I heard him call my name. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because if I turned around, if I looked into those amber brown eyes one more time, I might do something catastrophic. Like tell him the truth. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, when I'd just handed Louis the key to unraveling 7 years of carefully constructed protection? A 6-year-old son. The words echoed in my mind as I lay in my small but comfortable bedroom, staring at the ceiling of the townhouse I'd worked myself half to death to afford. Down the hall, Luca slept peacefully in his room decorated with dinosaur posters and scattered Lego sets, completely unaware that his entire world had shifted on its axis. My phone buzzed for the 15th time since I'd gotten home. I didn't need to check to know who it was. Louis had my business number. It was on every contract, every email, every piece of correspondence about the event. What he didn't have was the right to use it at 2 a.m. But apparently, rights didn't matter much to a man who'd just discovered a 7-year-old mystery. I rolled over and grabbed my phone, finally looking at the messages I'd been ignoring. We need to talk. El Fiore, please, just answer one question. El, I know you're awake. I can see your office email is active. El, is he mine? El. That last message had come through 10 minutes ago. Short, direct, devastating in its simplicity. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A simple no would end this, would send him looking in other directions, protect Luca from a world I'd sworn to keep him away from. Louis would never know the truth, never have a claim on our son, never bring the danger and darkness of his life into Luca's innocent world. But I couldn't make my fingers type the lie. Instead, I set the phone down and pulled my laptop onto my lap, opening the files I kept locked behind 3 levels of password protection. The ones I never looked at unless I was feeling particularly masochistic. There were only a few photos from that night 7 years ago. We'd taken them on his phone. Selfies in the dive bar where we'd met. Candid shots on the beach. One blurry image of us dancing under streetlights with my head thrown back in laughter. He'd texted them to me the next morning with a message that had made my heart soar. Last night was perfect. You're perfect. When can I see you again? I'd been in the bathroom of my college dorm, staring at the pregnancy test with shaking hands when that message came through. Had wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. To think that maybe, just maybe, this beautiful boy from a world so different from mine would stand by me. So I'd texted back. We need to talk. It's important. His response had been immediate. Come to my family's house. I'll tell my father I'm bringing someone special. He'll want to meet you. I'd been so stupid, so impossibly naive. The memory I'd spent 7 years trying to suppress forced its way to the surface, vivid and terrible. I'd worn my best dress, a vintage floral number that I'd found at a thrift store, and altered myself. My hands shook as I rang the doorbell of the Salvatore estate, the same building I'd just spent 3 months planning an event in, though I hadn't known it then. A severe woman in her 50s answered. Miss DeLuca, please come in. Mr. Salvatore is expecting you. Actually, I'm here to see Louis. Mr. Salvatore is expecting you, she repeated, her voice firm. This way. I'd followed her through corridors I would later walk as a professional, my heart hammering with nerves and hope in the secret I carried. The study she led me to was all dark wood and leather, imposing in a way that made me feel small. The man behind the desk didn't stand when I entered, didn't smile. Just studied me with eyes that were the same amber brown as his son's, but cold where Louis's had been warm. Miss DeLuca, sit. It wasn't an invitation. I sat. My son mentioned he met someone. His voice was calm, measured, terrifying in its control. He didn't mention she was pregnant. The blood drained from my face. How did you... I know everything that happens in this family. He leaned forward, hands folded on the desk. The question is, what do you want from us? Money? A payoff to disappear? Or are you naive enough to think my son will marry you? I don't want money. My voice came out smaller than I intended. I just want Louis to know. He has a right to... My son has a right to the future we've planned for him. A future that doesn't include trailer trash trying to trap him with a pregnancy. The words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'm not trying to trap anyone. I just thought he should know. And now you've told me. Consider your duty done. He pulled out a checkbook, began writing. This is more money than you'd see in 5 years of whatever minimum wage job you're working. Take it and disappear. Get rid of the problem. Start fresh somewhere else. Problem? My hand instinctively covered my stomach. This is a baby. Your grandchild. This is a mistake that needs correcting. He slid the check across the desk. I've arranged an appointment for you tomorrow. A private clinic, very discreet. Afterward, you'll sign a document stating you'll have no further contact with my family. In return, you'll be compensated for your inconvenience. Horror washed over me. You want me to. I can't. I won't. You will. His voice didn't rise, but the threat in it was unmistakable. Or I'll make sure every door you try to walk through in this city closes in your face. Every job application rejected. Every apartment lease denied. You think you can raise a child with no income, no support? How long before social services takes it away? Tears burned my eyes. Please, just let me talk to Louis. My son is in Milan on business. By the time he returns, this will be resolved. He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. Marco will drive you to the clinic tomorrow at 9. Be ready. I'd stumbled out of that office in a daze. The severe woman was waiting in the hallway. Come with me, dear. We'll get you settled in a guest room for the night. I'd let her lead me, my mind numb with shock. They were going to kill my baby, Louis's baby, and there was nothing I could do about it, except run. At 3 a.m, I'd climbed out the guest room window, dropped into the garden, and run until my lungs burned and my cheap heels broke. I'd hitchhiked to the bus station, bought a ticket with the last of my money, and disappeared into a life I'd had to build from nothing. A sob caught in my throat as the memory released me. 7 years, and it still had the power to break me. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Louis. "Fiore, please. I need to know. Is he mine?" The truth was, Louis had never hurt me. He'd been in Milan, probably thinking about our perfect night together, completely unaware that his father was threatening the girl he'd called special. But he was his father's son, groomed to take over the family business. And that business was built on control, manipulation, and the kind of power that destroyed anyone who got in its way. I couldn't let Luca become collateral damage in that world. A soft knock on my bedroom door made me close the laptop quickly. "Mama?" Luca stood in the doorway, his dark hair sticking up in all directions. One of his dinosaur stuffed animals clutched to his chest. He had Louis's eyes, that same amber brown that shifted colors in different light. Louis's long lashes. Louis's smile that could light up a room. "Bad dream, sweetheart?" I patted the bed beside me. He climbed up, burrowing into my side the way he'd done since he was a toddler. "I dreamed you went away and didn't come back." My heart clenched. "I'll always come back to you. Always. Promise?" "Promise." I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. "Nothing could keep me away from you. Not even my dad?" His voice was small, uncertain. "If you found him, would you want to stay with him instead of me?" It was a question he'd asked variations of since he was old enough to realize other kids had fathers. I'd always answered the same way, but tonight the words felt heavier. "Luca, listen to me." I pulled back to look at his face. "You are the most important person in my entire world. No one, not your father or anyone else, is more important than you. Everything I do to keep you safe and happy. Do you understand?" He nodded, but his eyes were troubled. "Tommy at school says his dad left because he wasn't good enough. Is that why my dad isn't here?" "Because I'm not good enough." "No." The word came out fierce. "Your father doesn't know about you, Luca, and that's my fault, not yours. You are perfect. You are loved. And someday, when you're older, I'll explain everything. But for now, I need you to trust me when I say I'm protecting you the only way I know how." "Okay, Mama." He snuggled back against me. "Can I sleep here tonight?" "Of course, baby." Within minutes, his breathing had evened out into sleep. But I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzing intermittently with messages I couldn't bring myself to answer. Because the truth was complicated. Louis deserved to know he had a son. Luca deserved to know his father. But I also had to protect my child from a man whose very existence was dangerous, whose father had proven exactly how little one child's life mattered when weighed against family legacy. When dawn broke, I had 24 messages from Louis and no answers for any of us. I called Marco, my assistant, as I made breakfast for Luca. "I need you to handle the Salvatore account follow-up. Send the final invoice, close out the contract, and forward any communication to your email." "Is everything okay?" Marco knew me well enough to hear the strain in my voice. "The event was perfect, Fiore. We're getting calls for bookings because of it." "Everything's fine. I just need some distance from this particular client." Distance. As if that would help when Louis Salvatore had just been handed the biggest mystery of his life, and every resource imaginable to solve it. I drove Luca to school, watching him run toward his classroom with his backpack bouncing, so innocent and unaware of the storm gathering around us. His teacher, Mrs. Morrison, waved at me from the doorway, and I forced a smile I didn't feel. My phone rang as I pulled out of the school parking lot. An unknown number, but I knew who it was before I answered. "Hello, Louis. Don't hang up." His voice was rough, like he'd been awake all night. "Please, Fiore, I just need to know the truth." I pulled over into a coffee shop parking lot, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. "Why does it matter? You have your life. I have mine. Let's keep it that way. Because if I have a son," his voice cracked slightly, "if we have a son together, then I've missed 6 years of his life. 6 years, Fiore. First steps, first words, first everything. And I need to know if that's my fault or yours." The accusation stung. "You want to talk about fault? Let's talk about your father." Silence. Then carefully. "What does my father have to do with this?" "Everything." The word came out bitter. "He has everything to do with why you don't know about Luca. Why you've missed those 6 years. Why I ran and never looked back." "My father is dead, Fiore. He died 3 years ago. I knew that. I'd read about it in the papers, felt a savage satisfaction that the man who'd threatened my child had faced his own mortality. But it didn't change what he'd done." "I know. But what he did 7 years ago is very much alive." "Then tell me." Louis's voice was urgent, almost desperate. "Tell me what he did. Let me understand." I closed my eyes, 7 years of secrets pressing against my throat. "He tried to force me to abort your child. When I refused to take his money and disappear, he threatened to destroy my life. So I ran. I spent 3 months in a women's shelter in Nevada, Louis. I worked 2 jobs while pregnant just to save enough for a security deposit on a studio apartment. I gave birth alone in a county hospital because I couldn't afford anything better. I've spent 7 years building a life for our son from absolutely nothing. And I did it all because your father made it very clear that we weren't welcome in your world." The silence that followed was deafening. "Our son." Louis's voice was barely a whisper. "You said our son." "Yes." Tears slipped down my cheeks. "His name is Luca. He's 6 years old. He has your eyes and your smile and your stubborn determination. And he's the best thing that's ever happened to me, even if he came from one perfect night with someone I can never have. Fiore, I have to go." I wiped my eyes, trying to pull myself together. "I have a meeting with a client." "Wait, please. I need to see him. I need to meet my son." "I don't know if that's a good idea." "I don't care if it's a good idea." His voice turned hard, commanding. "He's my son. I have a right to know him." "Rights?" Anger flared through my grief. "You want to talk about rights? Where were my rights when your father threatened me? When he arranged an abortion appointment without my consent? When he called me trailer trash and told me I wasn't good enough for his family? I didn't know." His voice was raw. "God, Fiore, I swear I didn't know. I was in Milan. I came back and you were just gone. I hired investigators, called everyone we'd talked to that night. It was like you'd vanished into thin air. Because I had to protect myself and protect our baby from a family that saw us as problems to be eliminated. I'm not my father." The words came out fierce. "I'm not him, Fiore. And I would have stood by you. I would have helped you. I was falling in love with you that night. And when you disappeared, it nearly destroyed me." The confession hung between us, painful and useless. It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. It does matter. Because I have a son who doesn't know me, and a woman I never stopped thinking about who hates me for something I didn't do. I don't hate you. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. I hate the situation. I hate that we were so young and so stupid. I hate that your father was cruel and that I had to choose between safety and the fairy tale. But I don't hate you, Louis. I don't trust that you can be in Luca's life without bringing danger with you. Let me prove it to you." His voice softened. "Let me meet him. Let me show you that I can be the father he deserves. He doesn't know who you are. He thinks his father just isn't in the picture. Then introduce me as a friend, someone you know from before. Just let me see him, Fiore. Please, 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." Every instinct screamed that this was a mistake, that opening this door would lead to complications I couldn't control. But another part of me, the part that had fallen for Louis in a single night, that remembered the gentleness in his touch and the wonder in his eyes, whispered that maybe, just maybe, he deserved this chance, and Luca deserved a father. 1 hour, I finally said. Tomorrow afternoon, the park near my house. But Louis, if you bring any of your business anywhere near my son, if I see anyone watching us or following us, if I get even a hint that this puts him in danger, I'll come alone, he promised. No security, no family, just me. I just want to meet my son. After we hung up, I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or if maybe I was finally doing the right thing. The park was busy for a Thursday afternoon. Children screamed on the playground, dogs chased frisbees across the grass, and young mothers pushed strollers along the walking path. Normal, safe, the kind of environment where mafia princes didn't belong. But there he was. Louis sat on a bench 50 feet from where I'd positioned myself, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Dark sunglasses hid his eyes, but I could feel his attention locked on the playground where Luca climbed the jungle gym with the fearless confidence of a 6-year-old who believed himself invincible. My son had his father's recklessness. That was going to be a problem. I'd barely slept after making this arrangement, had second-guessed myself 100 times, had even picked up the phone to cancel before forcing myself to put it down. Because as terrified as I was of letting Louis into our lives, I was more terrified of the conversation I'd eventually have to have with Luca about why I'd kept them apart. Louis's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, typed something quickly, then returned his attention to the playground. Even trying to be casual, he radiated the kind of controlled power that made people instinctively give him space. The woman on the bench beside him had shifted slightly away, some primal part of her brain recognizing danger, even if she couldn't articulate it. "Mama, watch!" Luca's voice carried across the playground. "I'm going to jump." "Be careful," I called back, watching him hang from the monkey bars before dropping to the sand below with a triumphant grin. That's when Louis stood up. He moved slowly, deliberately, closing the distance between us with the careful approach of someone who'd been warned not to spook a wild animal. When he was close enough to speak without shouting, he stopped. "He's beautiful." His voice was rough with emotion. "He looks just like you," I finished. "I know. It's impossible to miss once you know what to look for." Louis pulled off his sunglasses, and I saw red-rimmed eyes that suggested he'd slept as poorly as I had. "Can I meet him? Please." I studied his face, searching for any sign of the manipulation I'd learned to expect from his father. But all I saw was raw, desperate hope mixed with fear. "Luca," I called. "Come here for a minute, sweetheart." And my son came running, his dark hair flying, his cheeks flushed from exertion. He skidded to a stop in front of us, eyeing Louis with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. "Luca, this is my friend Louis. We knew each other a long time ago." The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. "Louis, this is my son." "Hi." Luca stuck out his hand with the formal politeness I'd taught him. "I'm Luca Alexander Moretti. I'm 6 3/4 years old." Louis stared at the small hand for a heartbeat before taking it, his large hand engulfing Luca's completely. "It's very nice to meet you, Luca. Your mother has told me a lot about you." "She has?" Luca looked up at me, surprised. "Mama doesn't usually talk about me to strangers." "Louis isn't exactly a stranger," I said carefully. "We're old friends." "Oh." Luca studied Louis with the intense scrutiny only children can achieve. "You have the same eyes as me. Did you notice? Mama says my eyes are special because they change colors." I watched Louis's throat work as he swallowed hard. "I did notice. They're very special, just like you." "Do you want to see me on the swings? I can go really high now. Mama says I'm not allowed to jump off anymore because last time I hurt my arm, but I can show you how high I can go." "I'd love that." Louis's voice was thick with suppressed emotion. The next 45 minutes were surreal. I sat on the bench, watching the man I'd spent 7 years trying to forget push our son on the swings, help him across the balance beam, and listen with genuine interest as Luca explained the complex rules of a game he'd invented involving dinosaurs and space pirates. Louis was good with him, patient and attentive in a way I hadn't expected. He didn't talk down to Luca or treat him like a prop. He engaged fully, asked questions, laughed at Luca's jokes, and looked at our son like he was witnessing a miracle. Which I supposed he was. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Cute kid. Would be a shame if something happened to him." Ice flooded my veins. I shot to my feet, my eyes scanning the park with sudden paranoia. Mothers with strollers, teenagers on skateboards, an older man feeding pigeons, a woman in a business suit talking on her phone near the parking lot. Any of them could be a threat. Another text came through, this time with a photo. Luca on the swings, Louis pushing him, both of them laughing. Taken from somewhere in the park, taken minutes ago. The Salvatore heir finally has something worth protecting. How much is the boy worth to you, I wonder? My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I looked up to find Louis watching me, his expression shifting from joy to concern in an instant. He said something to Luca, ruffled his hair, then walked quickly toward me. "What's wrong?" He saw my face and his whole body went tense. "Fiore, what happened?" I thrust the phone at him wordlessly, watched his eyes scan the messages, watched his jaw clench, watched fury and fear war across his features. "Get Luca, now." His voice was cold, commanding. "My car is the black Audi in the north lot. Get in it and lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Louis, do it now." He was already pulling out his own phone, his fingers flying across the screen. "I need to make a call." "Luca!" My voice came out shrill with barely controlled panic. "We need to go, baby. Right now." Something in my tone made Luca come running without his usual protests. He grabbed my hand, his small fingers gripping tight. "Mama, what's wrong? You're scaring me." "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. We just need to leave quickly." I scooped him up despite his protests that he was too big to be carried, and half ran toward the parking lot. Behind me, I heard Louis's voice, low and deadly. "I don't care what you're doing. Drop it and get to Riverside Park now. Someone just threatened my son." My son. The words sent a confusing mix of terror and something else through me, something that felt dangerously like relief. We reached the Audi, sleek, black, expensive enough to have armor plating if Louis was smart. The doors were unlocked. I threw myself into the back seat with Luca, locked the doors, and pulled him close. "Is Louis coming?" Luca asked, his voice small. "I like him. He's nice." "He's coming, baby. Everything's going to be okay." I didn't know if I was lying. Through the tinted windows, I watched Louis pace near the entrance to the park, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing sharply as he spoke. Even from a distance, I could see the transformation from the gentle man who'd pushed our son on the swings to something far more dangerous. This was Louis Salvatore, head of the family. Not the 18-year-old boy I'd fallen for, but the man he'd been groomed to become. And I'd just dragged our son directly into his world. 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot within 5 minutes, disgorging men in dark suits who moved with military precision. Louis directed them with sharp hand gestures, sending them fanning out across the park. Searching, hunting. One of the men approached our car. I tensed, but Louis was with him. He tapped on the window, and I unlocked the door. "Fiore, this is Marco. He's my head of security. He's going to drive you and Luca to a safe location." "What about you?" "I need to find out who sent those messages." His eyes were hard, merciless. "And make very clear what happens to people who threaten my family." "Louis, we can't just—" "Yes, you can." He crouched down to Luca's eye level. "Hey, buddy. I need you to do something very important for me. Can you be brave and take care of your mama for a little while?" Luca nodded solemnly. "I'm very brave. Mama says so." "I know you are." Louis reached out, hesitated, then gently squeezed Luca's shoulder. "I'm going to make sure you're both safe. That's a promise." Then he looked at me, and the intensity in his eyes stole my breath. "Trust me. Please. I know I haven't earned it, but trust me with this." I wanted to argue, wanted to grab Luca and run like I had 7 years ago, but the truth was, I had nowhere to run. Whoever had sent those messages already knew where to find us, already knew about Luca, already knew he was Louis's son. The secret I'd protected for 7 years was out, and the only person who could protect us now was the man I'd spent those same 7 years hiding from. "Okay," I whispered. "But Louis, don't do anything that will make our son ashamed of his father. Please." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe. Or understanding. "I'll do what needs to be done. Nothing more." Marco drove us out of the park in silence, another SUV following close behind. Luca pressed against my side, uncharacteristically quiet as he processed the sudden change in our afternoon. I stroked his hair and stared out the window, watching familiar streets give way to unfamiliar ones. We were heading into the wealthy district, toward the Salvatore estate. "Where are we going?" I finally asked Marco. "Mr. Salvatore's private residence. Ma'am, it's the most secure location in the city. No one gets in without his explicit authorization." "I don't want to go there." The memories of that place, of what had happened in that study 7 years ago, made my skin crawl. "Mr. Salvatore anticipated your concern." Marco's voice was respectful but firm. "He's arranged for you to stay in the guest house on the property. Separate entrance, separate security. You won't need to enter the main house unless you choose to." Unless I chose to. As if I had choices anymore. The gates opened at our approach, massive iron things that probably cost more than my townhouse. The estate looked different in daylight, less imposing, but somehow more real. This was where Louis lived, where he conducted business, where his father had threatened my unborn child. The guest house was actually a small cottage set apart from the main building, surrounded by manicured gardens and far more charming than I'd expected. Marco unlocked the door and stood aside. "There are guards posted at both entrances to the property. No one gets in or out without Mr. Salvatore's approval. The pantry is stocked, and if you need anything, there's an intercom that connects directly to the main house security." "How long are we supposed to stay here?" "Until Mr. Salvatore says it's safe to leave, ma'am." So we were prisoners. Comfortable, well-protected prisoners, but prisoners nonetheless. After Marco left, I explored the cottage with Luca trailing behind me. 3 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a living room with a television and enough books to stock a small library. Large windows overlooked the gardens, but I noticed they were bulletproof glass. Everything about this place screamed money and power and danger. "Mama, are we in trouble?" Luca climbed onto the couch beside me, his dinosaur backpack still strapped to his shoulders like armor. "No, baby. We're just staying somewhere safe for a little while. Because of the bad people who took our picture?" I'd forgotten how perceptive children could be. "Yes, because of them. Is Louis going to stop them?" His voice was small, hopeful. "He seems like he could stop bad people. He's really strong. Did you see his arms?" Despite everything, I almost smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. Louis is going to make sure we're safe." "Good." Luca yawned, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. "I like him, Mama. Can he be my friend?" I pulled him close, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. "We'll see, baby. We'll see." He fell asleep against my shoulder while I sat in that expensive cottage and wondered what the hell I'd gotten us into. My phone buzzed. A message from Louis. The threat came from the Castellano family. They've been trying to undermine my position since I took over. Finding out about Luca gave them ammunition. I'm handling it. Handling it. I knew what that meant in his world. Violence, retribution, the kind of justice that happened in shadows. Another message followed. "You and Luca are safe. I promise you that. No one will touch either of you. I'll die before I let anything happen to my family." My family. 7 years ago, I'd run from that word. From everything it meant in the Salvatore world. But now, with my son asleep in my arms and threats coming from every direction, I was starting to understand something terrifying. Maybe I needed Louis Salvatore and his dangerous world more than I'd ever wanted to admit. Maybe we always had. I woke to the smell of pancakes. For a moment, disoriented in the unfamiliar bedroom with its silk sheets and blackout curtains, I thought I was dreaming. Then reality crashed back. The threats, the cottage, Louis's world closing around us like a fist. I bolted upright, panic flooding through me. "Luca!" In the kitchen with Mr. Salvatore, ma'am. A woman's voice came from the doorway. She was perhaps 60, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a simple dress and apron. "I'm Teresa. I help manage the estate. Your son woke early and was hungry, so Mr. Salvatore is making him breakfast." Louis was here, in the cottage, making breakfast for our son. I threw on the robe that had been laid out on the chair, cashmere, ridiculously soft, and rushed toward the kitchen. The scene that greeted me made my heart stutter. Luca sat at the kitchen island, swinging his legs and chattering excitedly while Louis stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with surprising competence. He'd changed from yesterday's clothes into fresh jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, his hair still damp from a shower. He looked domestic, almost normal, except for the gun I could see holstered at his back when he reached for the syrup. "Mama!" Luca spotted me and his face lit up. "Louis makes pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Look, this one's a T-Rex." Indeed, the pancake on his plate bore a vague resemblance to a dinosaur. Louis looked up, his eyes meeting mine with careful neutrality. "I hope you don't mind. He was hungry, and Teresa said you were still sleeping. How long have you been here?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "Since about 5 this morning. I wanted to make sure the security upgrade was completed." He slid a perfectly round pancake onto a plate and handed it to me. "You should eat. We need to talk, but not in front of Luca." As if on cue, Teresa appeared in the doorway. "Master Luca, would you like to see the gardens? We have a koi pond that I think you'd enjoy." Luca looked at me for permission. I wanted to say no, wanted to keep him within arm's reach, but the earnest hope in his eyes made me relent. "Stay where Teresa can see you. Don't go near the edge of the pond." "I won't, Mama. I'm very responsible." He grabbed another dinosaur pancake and followed Teresa outside, leaving Louis and me alone. The silence stretched. Louis poured coffee, somehow knowing I took it black with 1 sugar, and set the mug in front of me. "The Castellanos sent the threats. he said without preamble. Vincent Castellano specifically. He's the son, young and stupid, and trying to prove himself to what's left of their organization. What's left? I wrapped my hands around the mug, needing something to hold on to. They've been in decline since my father systematically dismantled their operations 5 years ago. Vincent thinks taking me down will restore their family's position. His jaw tightened. He made a mistake targeting Luca. What did you do? I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Louis moved to the window, watching Luca crouch beside the koi pond with Teresa. I made it very clear that anyone who threatens my son forfeits their right to draw breath in this city. Vincent Castellano is currently explaining himself to what's left of his family council. By tonight, they'll either deliver him to me for punishment, or they'll be out of the city entirely. The casual way he discussed violence made my stomach turn. And if they don't, they will. No doubt. No hesitation. Because I've shown them exactly what I'm capable of when my family is threatened. We're not your family, Louis. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Luca was his son. That made us connected whether I liked it or not. Yes, you are. He turned to face me, and the raw intensity in his eyes stole my breath. I have a son, Fiore. A 6-year-old boy who looks at me like I hung the moon just because I made him dinosaur pancakes. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To discover you have this person who exists because of one perfect night, and you've missed 6 years of his life? You think I don't know what that feels like? Anger surged through me. I've been his only parent for 6 years, Louis. I've been there for every fever, every nightmare, every scraped knee and hurt feeling. I've done it alone while you were building your empire and living your life without consequences. Without consequences? His voice rose slightly. You think I lived without consequences? I spent 7 years looking for you, Fiore. 7 years wondering what I'd done wrong, why you'd disappeared, whether I'd imagined how perfect that night was. I've been with other women and compared every single one to a memory. I've built this life, this power, and none of it meant anything, because the one person who made me feel real was gone. The confession hung between us, raw and painful. You want to talk about consequences? My voice shook. Your father put a gun to my head, metaphorically, and told me to abort your child, or he'd destroy my life. I ran with nothing, Louis. No money, no family, no plan. I spent 3 months in a shelter eating donated food and trying not to think about the fact that the man I'd fallen for in one night would never know his own child. So don't tell me about consequences when I've been living them every single day. Louis's face had gone pale. A gun to your head. He was very clear about what would happen if I didn't comply. So I ran. And I've been running ever since. I set down my coffee cup before I threw it. But now I can't run anymore, can I? Because someone took a picture of our son and threatened him, and the only person who can keep him safe is you. I will keep him safe. Louis crossed to me, stopping just short of touching. I swear to you, Fiore, on everything I am, no one will hurt our son. The Castellanos, anyone who even thinks about threatening Luca, I'll burn this city to the ground before I let them touch him. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. I looked up at him, letting him see my fear. You'll protect him by pulling him into your world, by making him a target, by teaching him that violence is how you solve problems. No. His hands came up to frame my face, gentle despite the steel in his voice. I'll protect him by making sure everyone knows that touching a Salvatore means death. I'll protect him by being the father he deserves, not the man my father raised me to be. And I'll protect him by protecting you, because God knows you've done this alone for too long. Tears burned my eyes. I don't know how to do this, Louis. I don't know how to let you in without losing everything I've built. Then don't let me in all at once. His thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized had fallen. Let me prove myself. Let me show you that I can be what Luca needs. What you both need. And what do I need? The question escaped before I could stop it. His eyes darkened, his gaze dropping to my lips. The same thing you needed 7 years ago. Someone who sees you. Someone who chose you then and is choosing you now. Someone who fell in love with you in one night and never fell back out. The air between us crackled with tension. I should have pulled away, should have maintained the distance I'd worked so hard to create. But his hands were warm on my face, and his eyes held promises I desperately wanted to believe. Luis. The kitchen door burst open. Marco stood there, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. Vincent Castellano just showed up at the main gate. He's alone, unarmed, asking for a meeting. Luis' hands dropped from my face, his expression shifting instantly from vulnerable to deadly. Tell the guards to search him thoroughly, then bring him to my study. I'll be there in 5 minutes. After Marco left, Luis turned back to me. Stay here with Luca. Don't leave the cottage. What are you going to do? Find out why Vincent is stupid enough to show up at my door after threatening my son. He paused at the doorway. And Fiore? What I said before, I meant every word. This conversation isn't over. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the terrifying realization that I was falling for him again. I watched through the window as Louis strode across the grounds toward the main house, his posture radiating controlled fury. This was the man who ran an empire built on fear, who made grown men nervous with a single look, who could order someone's death as easily as he'd ordered breakfast. But he was also the man who'd made our son dinosaur pancakes, who'd looked at me like I was precious, who'd promised to be better than his father. Which version was real? Could both versions exist in the same person? Mama, look! Luca's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He ran up to the window, his hands cupped around something. Teresa let me hold a fish. It was this big. He spread his hands in the exaggerated way children do. I smiled despite everything. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Is Louis coming back? His face fell slightly. I wanted to show him the fish. He had to work, baby. But I'm sure he'll want to hear all about it later. He's really nice, Mama. Luca pressed his hands against the glass, watching Louis disappear into the main house. I wish he could stay. My heart clenched. Maybe he can visit sometimes. Not visit. Stay. Luca turned to me with that direct, innocent gaze that children have. Like a dad stays. Do you think he'd want to be my dad? The question I'd been dreading for 6 years, now impossible to avoid. I knelt down to Luca's eye level, taking his small hands in mine. Sweetheart, that's complicated. Why? He's nice. You're nice. And he has the same eyes as me. Tommy at school says that means we're related. Smart kid. Too smart for his own good. Louis is. Yes, he's related to you. But being a dad is more than just being related. It's about being there every day, taking care of someone, making sure they're happy and safe. Louis said he'd keep us safe. That's what dads do, right? Out of the mouths of babes. Before I could formulate a response that wasn't a complete lie, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tell Louis that Vincent Castellano didn't come alone. He brought insurance. Check the news. Ice flooded my veins. I pulled up the news on my phone with shaking hands. Breaking. Fire at Riverside Elementary School. Students evacuated. Suspicious circumstances under investigation. Riverside Elementary. Luca's school. The school I'd fought to get him into because it was safe. Because it had security. Because no one from Louis's world should have known he went there. Another text came through. Your boy's classroom. 2nd floor, west wing, where he sits by the window and draws dinosaurs during free time. "We know everything, Mrs. Moretti. Tell the Salvatore prince that Vincent wants to negotiate, or next time it won't be an empty classroom." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. They'd targeted Luca's school. His classroom. They knew where he sat. "Mama, you're scaring me again." Luca's small voice cut through my panic. I pulled him close, my mind racing. Louis was in a meeting with Vincent right now. Vincent, who apparently had partners willing to burn down an elementary school to make a point. I had to warn him, had to tell him that this wasn't just about the Castellanos anymore. This was war. And our son was the prize. I grabbed Luca's hand and headed for the door, Teresa calling after me in alarm. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because somewhere in that main house, Louis was walking into a trap, and I was the only one who knew it. I ran across the manicured grounds with Luca in my arms, my lungs burning, Teresa's shouts fading behind me. Security guards materialized from nowhere, blocking my path to the main house. "Ma'am, you can't—" "Get Louis, now." I thrust my phone at the nearest guard, the news article still displayed. "Vincent Castellano burned down my son's school. This is a trap." The guard's eyes widened as he read. Then he spoke urgently into his radio. "Code red. Threat to the principal's family. Alert Mr. Salvatore immediately." Everything happened fast after that. More guards appeared, surrounding us in a protective circle. Marco burst from the house at a dead run, his weapon drawn. And then Louis emerged, his face a mask of cold fury that made even his own men step back. His eyes found mine across the distance, and something in his expression shifted. Not softening exactly, but sharpening with a different kind of intensity. He moved toward us with purpose, ignoring Marco's attempts to brief him. "Fiore." My name was a question and a command. "What happened?" I showed him the texts, the news article, watched his jaw clench as he processed the threat, the violation of our son's safe place. "Who is it?" Luca's small voice cut through the tension. He'd been quiet in my arms, but now he was looking at Louis with wide, frightened eyes. "Who hurt my school?" Louis's expression transformed as he looked at our son. The cold fury melted into something gentler, more human. He reached out slowly, giving Luca the choice to come to him or stay with me. Luca reached back without hesitation. Louis took him carefully, settling our son against his chest like he'd been doing it for years instead of hours. "Bad people, buddy. But I promise you, they won't hurt anyone again." "Are you going to stop them?" Luca's voice was small but trusting. "Like a superhero?" Something cracked in Louis's expression. "Yeah, like a superhero. But first, I need to make sure you and your mama are safe." He turned to Marco. "Get them to the panic room. Full lockdown protocol. No one gets in except me." "Louis, what are you going to do?" I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear him say it. His eyes met mine over Luca's head. "What I should have done the moment they threatened my family. I'm ending this." "By killing him?" I kept my voice low so Luca wouldn't hear. "By becoming exactly what your father was?" "No." His voice was firm, certain. "By being better. Vincent wants to negotiate? Fine, we'll negotiate. But he'll learn that threatening children, my child, puts you beyond negotiation, beyond mercy, beyond everything except consequences." Marco stepped closer. "Boss, Vincent is still in your study. He doesn't know we're aware of the school fire yet. We have the advantage." "Good. Keep it that way." Louis handed Luca back to me with obvious reluctance. "Take them to the panic room. I'll handle Vincent." "I'm coming with you." The words escaped before I could think them through. Louis's eyes widened. "Absolutely not. You need to stay with Luca. Luca will be safe with Marco and your guards. But I need to be there." I shifted our son to Marco's arms, ignoring Luca's protest. That man threatened my baby. I deserve to look him in the eye. Fiore. I've spent 7 years protecting our son alone, Louis. I've faced threats you can't imagine. I've survived your father's cruelty and built a life from nothing. Don't you dare tell me I can't handle this. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Marco, take Luca to the panic room. Post guards at every entrance. If anything happens to my son, nothing will happen to him, boss. You have my word. Luca was crying now, reaching for me. Mama, don't go. Please don't leave me. I kissed his forehead, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his small body against mine. I'll be right back, baby. I promise. Be brave for me, okay? Marco will keep you safe. I don't want to be brave. I want you. His sobs broke my heart, but I forced myself to step back. I love you, Luca. More than anything in this world. Remember that. Then Marco was carrying him away, and I was following Louis into the main house, into the belly of the beast I'd sworn never to enter again. The study where Louis's father had threatened me 7 years ago looked exactly the same. Same dark wood paneling, same leather furniture, same massive desk that seemed designed to intimidate. Vincent Castellano stood by the window, young and arrogant and stupid. He couldn't have been more than 25, with slicked back hair and a suit that tried too hard to project power. When we entered, he turned with a smile that died the moment he saw me. I wasn't aware we'd have company. His eyes raked over me dismissively. This is family business, sweetheart. Maybe you should... Careful. Louis's voice was deadly soft. That's the mother of my child you're dismissing. Show her the respect she deserves, or I'll teach you manners the hard way. Vincent's expression shifted to calculation. So, it's true. The great Louis Salvatore has a weakness. A woman and a bastard son. I felt Louis tense beside me, but I spoke before he could. My son isn't a bastard. He's the heir to the Salvatore Empire, which makes him more legitimate than you'll ever be, Vincent. Vincent's face flushed with anger. You think I'm afraid of a woman playing at being a mob wife? You don't belong in this world, sweetheart. You're just collateral damage. And you're just a boy playing at being a man. I stepped closer, letting him see the steel I'd forged over 7 years of survival. You burned down an elementary school to make a point. You threaten children because you're too weak to face Louis directly. You're not a threat. You're a coward. Fiore? Louis warned, but I was done being protected. No. He needs to hear this. I turned back to Vincent. You think threatening my son gives you power? All it does is guarantee you have no future, because Louis will destroy you for it. Not because you challenged his position, but because you made the mistake of thinking a 6-year-old child was a legitimate target. Vincent laughed, but it sounded forced. Destroy me? He can try. But I have insurance, partners, resources. The Castellano family might be in decline, but we're not dead yet. Actually, you are. Louis's voice was cold, final. Your family council voted an hour ago. They're cutting ties with you completely. Turns out targeting children crosses a line even for them. You're alone, Vincent. No family, no resources, no protection. The color drained from Vincent's face. You're lying. Call them if you don't believe me. Louis gestured to the phone on his desk. Your father, your uncles, even your younger brother. They all agreed. You're not a Castellano anymore. You're just a man who made a very bad decision. Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket. 3 of Louis's guards materialized from the shadows, weapons drawn and trained on him before he could complete the movement. I wouldn't. Louis's voice was almost bored. You're already dead, Vincent. The only question is whether it's quick or slow, painful or merciful. That choice is mine. Wait. Vincent's bravado crumbled. Wait, please. I didn't mean... The school was empty. No one was hurt. It was just supposed to scare you. It did scare me. Louis moved closer, his presence filling the room. It terrified me, because it showed me exactly how vulnerable my son is, how vulnerable the woman I love is. And that's unacceptable. The woman I love. The words hung in the air between us. So here's what's going to happen. Louis continued, his voice controlled despite the fury underneath. You're going to leave this city, tonight. You'll disappear so completely that even I won't be able to find you. And if you ever come near my family again, I won't just kill you. I'll erase your existence so thoroughly that it will be like you never existed at all. That's it? Vincent's voice shook. You're just letting me go? No, I'm giving you a chance to survive. What you do with that chance is up to you. Louis nodded to his guards. Get him out of my sight. They dragged Vincent out, his protests fading down the hallway. When we were alone, Louis turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You called yourself a mob wife. I was making a point. Were you? He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup my face. Because that's twice now you've claimed Luca as my heir. Twice you've stood beside me like you belong here. Like we're a family. We are a family. The admission escaped on a breath. I've been fighting it for 7 years. But we are. You're his father, Louis. And I can't keep pretending that doesn't matter. And us? His thumb traced my cheekbone. Does that matter too? I looked into those amber brown eyes, the same eyes that stared back at me every day from our son's face, and felt 7 years of walls crumbling. I never stopped loving you. The confession was terrifying and liberating all at once. I tried. God knows I tried. But you were the boy who made me believe in magic. And now you're the man who'd burn the world down to protect our son. How am I supposed to not love you? You're not. His voice was rough with emotion. You're supposed to let me love you back. Let me be the father Luca deserves, and the man you needed 7 years ago. Let me prove that I'm not my father, that I can be better, do better. I'm scared. The words trembled out of me. I'm scared of your world, of losing myself in it, of Luca growing up surrounded by violence. Then we changed the world. His forehead rested against mine. We make it better, together, for him and for every child who deserves to grow up without fear. It was an impossible promise, a naive dream, but looking into his eyes, I believed him. Okay, I breathed. Okay, we try. We build something new. But Louis, if you ever lie to me, if you ever keep secrets the way your father did, I won't. He kissed me softly, reverently. No more secrets. No more lies. Just us. Just family. A soft knock interrupted us. Marco appeared in the doorway, Luca clutching his hand and looking uncertain. Someone wanted to see his parents. Luca ran to us, and Louis scooped him up while pulling me close with his other arm. Our son looked between us, his young face serious. Are you fighting? I don't like when grown-ups fight. We're not fighting, buddy. Louis pressed a kiss to Luca's hair. We're figuring things out. That's what families do. Are we a family? Luca's voice was small, hopeful. Like a real family with a mama and a dad? Louis looked at me, the question in his eyes. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Yeah, buddy. Louis's voice was thick with emotion. We're a real family, if that's okay with you. It's very okay. Luca threw his arms around both our necks, pulling us together. Can we have pancakes again tomorrow? Family pancakes? Louis laughed, the sound free and genuine. Family pancakes every day if you want. Later, After Luca had fallen asleep in the cottage's guest room, Louis and I sat on the couch, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting on his chest. I meant what I said. His voice rumbled under my ear. About changing things. I want Luca to grow up knowing his father is more than just power and fear. I want him to be proud of me, and show him who you really are. I looked up at him. The man who makes dinosaur pancakes. The man who loves fiercely and protects completely. The man who chose family over empire. I'm choosing both. His hand found mine, our fingers intertwining. I can build something better, Fiore. We can build it together. A legacy that's more than just fear. Something Luca can inherit without shame. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, threats, moments where the darkness of Louis's world threatened to consume us. But looking at our joined hands, I felt something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Hope. We'd started with one perfect night and paid for it with 7 years of separation. But maybe, just maybe, we could transform that pain into something beautiful. A family forged not in perfection, but in truth, in sacrifice, in the kind of love that survives the worst and chooses to become better. I love you, Louis whispered against my hair. I loved you then. I love you now. I'll love you forever. I love you too. I tilted my face up for his kiss. All of you, even the dangerous parts. Especially the dangerous parts. His smile was wicked. They keep things interesting. Down the hall, Luca stirred in his sleep, murmuring something that sounded like dinosaur pancakes. We both smiled, connected by the miracle we'd created together. One night 7 years ago had changed everything. But this night, this moment of choosing each other, choosing family, choosing love over fear, this was the real beginning. And for the first time since I'd run from this estate pregnant and terrified, I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I wasn't alone. We never would be.